Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, there was a brother and sister named Hansel and Gretel. They lived in a small house by the forest with their father and stepmother. Their father was a poor woodcutter who hardly earned enough to feed his family. Their wicked stepmother would always complain that the two children ate too much, whereas they would even stay hungry many nights. One night, the stepmother whispered to her husband, "Honey, we need to talk." "About what?" "Problems, sweetheart. If we continue like this, we will all soon starve." "You're right, but I don't know what we should do." "I have a plan. Take the children deep into the forest, so far that they won't remember the way back, and then leave them to die." "Never! How can you say that? How? Tell me." "They are my children. I can't leave them." "If we continue to live together, we will all starve. This way, at least, we can take care of ourselves." "But what will happen to them? They'll be in danger in the forest. Anything could happen. Some wild animals might come along and eat them alive." The children were so hungry that they couldn't sleep, and they heard everything their parents said. For the next 7 nights, they heard their stepmother saying the same thing again and again. Every time their father would protest, but soon his protests began to weaken. Gretel was very terrified. "Hansel," she cried, "what are we going to do? Are we going to die?" Hansel was a very clever little boy. He tried to console Gretel. "Don't worry, we'll find the way back." One day, Hansel and Gretel heard their father say, "Hansel and Gretel, I'm not feeling well today. Please come with me to the forest and help me cut the wood and bring it home." The children knew what would happen, but both said, "Okay." Hansel had a plan. When their parents fell asleep, he went out quietly and filled his pockets with shiny, bright pebbles. He turned back and went to bed. The following morning, Hansel, Gretel, and their father went to the forest together. As they went deeper into the forest, Hansel dropped the pebbles one by one behind him. After walking for a long time, their father said to them lovingly, "My dear children, please sit here while I collect some firewood. Eat this bread. I saved it for you from last night's meal." With that, their father turned and left them all alone. The children sat under a tree as their father went away. They ate the bread and waited for a long time, but their father did not return. The forest grew darker and darker until the sun finally set. The owls started to hoot. Poor Gretel got really worried. She was frightened and confused. She started to cry. She said, "Oh, Hansel, our father has abandoned us. How will we ever find our way home?" Hansel said to her, "Our father has left us, but don't worry and don't cry. We will find the way home." The full moon came out. The sky was clear. The full moon started to light the night. "Look, the moon is rising. Soon I will be able to find our way home. Hold my hand and follow me. Everything will be fine," said Hansel. As soon as the moon rose, the white pebbles Hansel had dropped along the way began to glow and sparkle in its light. "Look, the pebbles I dropped are shining in the moonlight. Can you see them?" said Hansel. "Yes, I can," answered Gretel. "Now, what we should do is just follow these pebbles." Hansel and Gretel could see the pebbles clearly and were able to follow the moonlit pebbles all the way home. They walked through the forest for hours, following the pebbles. After walking the whole night, they reached their home in the morning. Their father was very happy to see them. He hugged them and kissed them, but their stepmother wasn't pleased to see them. She dropped the milk bowl in her hands and stomped away. How did they manage to find their way back home? She murmured. The following night, Gretel heard her stepmother whisper to her father again. Perhaps you didn't take them far enough. You must do it again, but this time you will leave them farther up the road in the forest, so that they will never get out. I can't do that once again. You must, otherwise we will all starve. For the next 7 days, their stepmother hassled their father. Then, one morning, just like before, their father asked them to accompany him to the forest. This time, Hansel didn't have the chance to pick up any pebbles, so he scattered breadcrumbs instead as they went into the forest. They walked deep into the forest. They finally stopped in the darkest part of the forest. Their father gave them some bread to eat and left them, making another excuse. Soon after the children had been left alone again, the sun set and it became dark. Gretel started to cry again. Hansel, how will we get home this time? Said Gretel. Don't worry, I marked the trail again. You did? Yes, don't worry. Everything will be fine. We will find out the way back as we did last time. They started to walk. They looked for the breadcrumbs, but there wasn't a single crumb of bread to be found. And what's more, there was no moonlight this time. Hansel hadn't thought of the birds in the forest. No sooner than they went ahead, the hungry birds swooped down upon the breadcrumbs and finished them. That's why they couldn't find any crumbs of bread. Hansel and Gretel were left alone in the forest, not knowing how to find their way home. They sat together under a tree, holding each other all night, listening to the sounds of furious animals struggling in the cold. When the morning came, they started looking for the way, but they were so far away from their house, they were lost in the forest. They went deeper and deeper into the forest, almost losing all hope of ever finding the way out. Towards the evening, when they were hungry and tired, and it was going to be dark and cold soon, they spotted a very curious-looking house. When they came closer for a better look, they were amazed to realize that it was all made up of tasty treats. They ran up to it. "This is not an ordinary house," said Hansel. "Hansel, look! The windows are made out of cookies, and the door is chocolate." "Wow, and there are candies in the walls instead of bricks," said Hansel. Hansel and Gretel were very hungry by that time, so they began to snatch cookies and candies out of the house and eat them. "It's very delicious," said Gretel, eating up a piece from the window. It's very tasty. It's a candy house," said Hansel. Just as Gretel was about to eat the doorknob, the door creaked open, and a fearsome old woman stepped out. Hansel and Gretel were panicked. They did not know what to do. "Who's eating my house?" said the woman. "We're very sorry, but we were so hungry," said Hansel. The ugly old woman realized that they were little children. "Oh, what sweet little children you are," she said in the voice that was surprisingly kind. "Oh my, you must be lost in the woods. Help yourself to whatever you want, and come inside for a nice nap." Hansel and Gretel hesitated to go in, as they got scared by the look of the old woman. "Come inside, why don't you feed yourself with such nice food, and have a rest here as long as you want," said the old woman. The children were very hungry and tired, and it was cold outside. Besides, there was lots of nice food inside. What's more, the woman's voice was so sweet. They went into the house, listening to her sweet voice. The old woman was very kind to them. She offered them more delicious food. They ate until they were stuffed and fell asleep right there. In fact, the ugly woman was a cruel witch. She put Hansel in a cage and locked the door. She held Gretel by her arm and said, "Work for me from now on. You will, or I eat the boy, I will." Poor Gretel. What could she do? She worked day and night. She started to do chores around the house. She got water from the river and cleaned the house. She worked as a slave. Although the old woman was very unkind and cruel, she did not starve them. She gave them nice food. The children wondered why. And one day, Gretel found the answer. She heard the witch mutter inside her room, "Not good enough to be cooked." At once, Gretel understood the witch's plan. She understood why she gave Hansel lots of tasty food every day. She wanted to fatten him up because she was planning to eat him. She rushed to Hansel's cage and gave him some chicken bones and whispered something into his ear. "I will not wait any longer, Gretel. Start the fire. I'm going to eat Hansel," said the witch. Gretel was very scared. She did what she was told, but then she remembered that the witch had bad eyes and decided to trick her. She went to the witch and said, "I tried to light the oven, but something is wrong. The fire wouldn't start." "Shame on you. Let me see," said the hasty, impatient witch. "Move aside, you stupid girl." The witch could not see the oven properly on account of her bad eyes, so she moved her face closer to the fire. When she leaned before the oven, desperate Gretel seized the moment and gave a tremendous push from behind. The witch fell right inside the burning oven, and Gretel quickly closed the door. It was for her brother. She couldn't leave him to die. The witch burned to a cinder in the flames. Then Gretel ran to the witch's room to find the key to Hansel's cage. But what a wonder there she found, a huge heap of gold coins. Gretel found the key and immediately freed Hansel from the cage. She told Hansel about the treasure in the witch's room. They entered the witch's room. Hansel looked for something to put the gold coins in. He found some sacks in a corner. They put as many gold coins as they could in the sacks. They took 2 pieces of chocolate from the door to feed themselves on the way back home and left the house. For many days they walked through the forest, eating the chocolate that they had taken from the door of the witch's house. Then, one day, they found the way back. "Dad, stepmother, we're back!" After abandoning their children, their father and stepmother continued to grow poorer and poorer. They began to feel very guilty and miserable as they tried their best to find the children, but it was too late. Now they spent all their days crying over their misfortune and hoping that the children would somehow find their way back home. Suddenly, Hansel and Gretel busted through the door. "Dad, Mom, we missed you very much," said the children. Their stepmother and father were very pleased to see them again. "Good Lord, you heard us. You saved our children," said the father. He hugged his children. You're back, safe and sound." "Children, I'm sorry for leaving you.
I'm really so happy to see you again, alive and well, said the stepmother. I'm very sorry. Can you ever forgive me? Yes, Mom. They were bad days for us. Gretel and me want to forget those days, said Hansel, and continued, Mom, Dad, look! Hansel and Gretel showed their parents the witch's treasure. We are rich now. See how much gold we have. They built a big house for themselves, and from that day forth, the family lived happily ever after. The end.